This presentation will discuss the Title I Part A requirement related to the Targeted Assistance Student Selection Criteria that's been selected for review as part of the Program Monitoring Validation process being conducted by the Federal Program Compliance Division at the Texas Education Agency. Documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure the overall compliance with program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the program monitoring validation process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. One of the things that distinguishes a targeted assistance program from a school-wide program is that not all students receive services. The LEA sets criteria to determine which students are most in need. According to the statute, in general, the eligible population on the campus are children not older than 21 who are entitled to a free public education, and children who are not yet at a grade level at which the LEA provides a free public education. Out of that general population, the campus identifies children as failing or most at risk of failing to meet the state's academic standards on the basis of multiple educationally related objective criteria established by the LEA and supplemented by the school. Except that children from preschool through grade 2 shall be selected solely on the basis of criteria, including objective criteria, established by the LEA and supplemented by the school. So let's unpack what that means a little bit. The Targeted Assistance Program participants are only students identified as most at risk of failing to meet the state academic standards. The school doesn't get to identify the whole school. The school doesn't even get to identify a whole grade level. They're only serving those students who are identified as most at risk of failing. The other thing we want to talk about is the multiple educationally related objective criteria. Multiple means that there's more than one. So because we're talking about objective criteria, we're talking about an assessment. So we're talking about more than one assessment. Examples of that could be STAR reading, STAR math, end of course exams. The LEA would be identifying more than one of the assessments that they were going to use as criteria for helping determine which students are most at risk of failing. For those students who are in preschool through grade 2, the LEA also establishes multiple criteria, but it's developmentally appropriate. It may also include objective criteria, but can also include teacher judgment, parent interviews, teacher checklists, and other items. So the LEA establishes the basic criteria that are going to be used at all of its targeted assistance campuses. But that criteria can be supplemented by each individual campus. So they use the LEA selection criteria. If the campus chooses to supplement the LEA's criteria, they would write the criteria that they were going to use to supplement it in the campus improvement plan. The campus would create one list of students to be served based on the multiple criteria so that the campus serves those students who are in most need of assistance. So for item 1.1, The LEA would submit evidence of the LEA's selection criteria that is to be used by its targeted assistance programs. Acceptable documentation for this would include relevant pages from the district's district improvement plan describing the LEA's selection criteria. So the LEA would spell out what those criteria are, what they were going to be for students in grades 3 through 12, and then if they were serving students who were preschool through grade 2, they would also establish criteria that would be developmentally appropriate for those grades. Then if the LEA has a campus that is supplementing that criteria, they would also submit relevant pages for the campus improvement plan describing how the campus is going to supplement the LEA's criteria. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for this item include the auditable documentation was not submitted, documentation submitted does not reflect the use of multiple educationally related objective criteria for grades 3 through 12, documentation submitted does not reflect developmentally appropriate criteria for grades preschool through 2 if those grades are included in the LEA's targeted assistance programs, or the documentation is not for the school year specified in the validation. Questions related to the program monitoring validations for the Title I Part A program may be directed to Vivian Smurl at essasupport@tea.texas.gov.